You're about to hear something that most people will never tell you, not because it's complicated, but because it's uncomfortable. And the truth is, the reason your relationships feel confusing, the reason you're constantly second guessing yourself, the reason you keep attracting the same patterns in different faces, it's not an accident. It's a psychological loop you've been living in without realizing it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That is exactly why you need to stay with me until the very end of this video, because what I'm about to explain will reshape the way you understand connection, attraction, and your own emotional power. Most people live their lives believing that the way someone treats them is a reflection of their worth. They don't understand that people respond to you based on the emotional standards you allow. They react to the energy you carry when you enter a room, the wounds you don't acknowledge, the self-respect you compromise without noticing. And if you've ever wondered why you do everything right and still get treated wrong, or why someone pulls away when you finally care, you're not imagining it. There is a psychological reason behind it. But it's a reason you were never taught, because the people who benefit from your confusion would rather you remain in the dark. What you're going to learn today will irritate some of your beliefs, challenge your assumptions, and force you to confront the one thing we all avoid: your patterns. Your emotional patterns shape your relationships more than your intentions ever will. And once you understand how they operate, you unlock a level of clarity that is dangerously empowering. So stay with me, because the shift you've been waiting for starts in the next few seconds. When a younger woman starts developing feelings for an older man, one of the most misunderstood psychological reactions she displays is silence, not distance, not disinterest, silence. And most men misinterpret this, assuming she's shy, reserved, or simply not that invested. But if you look deeper beyond the surface, you realize that silence is not a lack of emotion. It's the presence of something powerful unfolding inside her. Her quietness is not the quietness of emptiness. It's the quietness of calculation, curiosity, and emotional awareness. She becomes still because her mind becomes loud. She is observing, absorbing, studying. Not the way a student studies a textbook, but the way a human being studies something that ignites unfamiliar feelings. She watches how he carries himself, not because she's judging, but because she's trying to understand the energy she feels rising within her. And her silence is the safest space for that exploration. You see, younger women are used to noise. They're used to chaotic conversations, fast energy, impulsive interactions, men who talk more than they think. But an older man carries a different frequency, slower, grounded, intentional. When she feels that shift, when she senses maturity that doesn't compete for attention but naturally commands it, she pulls back inward. She gets quiet because she wants to feel the environment without disrupting it. Her silence is her way of tuning herself to his wavelength. And the reason this silence is so powerful is because she's not just observing him. She's observing herself in the presence of him. She notices how her body reacts, how her thoughts change, how her emotional state softens. She's evaluating whether the feeling she has is simply admiration or something deeper, more dangerous, more meaningful. This is the moment where attraction becomes emotional curiosity. It's the moment she steps out of superficial interest and into something that feels more like intention. Silence is also protection. Younger women often carry fear: fear of being misunderstood, fear of appearing too eager, fear of revealing too much too soon. With older men, the fear is different. It's not fear of rejection, it's fear of exposure. She senses that older men see more. They read emotional cues faster. They notice subtleties younger men miss. And that awareness makes her more cautious. She slows down her words because she knows every word matters. She slows down her reactions because she knows he pays attention to more than just what she says. Her silence allows her to control the speed at which she lets herself be known. And here's the part most men miss. Silence is where her attraction grows. When she's quiet, her mind rehearses possibilities. She imagines conversations. She pays attention to his tone, his patience, his emotional stability. She listens to how he speaks to others. She watches his eyes when he listens. She measures how safe she feels in his presence compared to how safe she has felt with men her age. The silent moments become data points. She builds a psychological map of who he is long before she reveals who she is becoming around him. Her silence is not passive, it is intentional. When a younger woman starts developing feelings for an older man, she retreats inward because she wants to process everything without being overwhelmed by the intensity of it. She senses the difference between lust and something richer, steadier, and more confusing. She knows this isn't the kind of attraction she can brush off the next day, so she studies it quietly, carefully, privately. And in that silence, her feelings deepen. What she's really listening for in those quiet moments is emotional consistency, stability, integrity. She wants to know if the calm she feels around him is real or just a projection of her imagination. Silence is her testing ground. It's her way of determining what kind of man he is without asking direct questions. And ironically, the more silent she becomes, the louder her feelings grow. That's why older men often sense something shifting before she ever says a word. They feel the energy, the softness, the attention, even the nervousness. Her silence is her confession long before she verbalizes anything. So when you see a younger woman becoming quiet around you, don't dismiss it. Don't assume she's uninterested. Recognize that something is unfolding inside her that she's trying to make sense of. Silence is her way of respecting the weight of what she feels. And sometimes the most powerful emotional signals are the ones wrapped in stillness, not speech. In the end, remember this when she goes quiet. It's not a pause, it's the beginning. When a younger woman begins developing feelings for an older man, something subtle but deeply revealing happens to her energy. It's not something she consciously decides. It's not something she puts on like makeup or rehearses the way she rehearses her social persona. It happens naturally, almost effortlessly. Her femininity softens, her tone changes, her body language shifts into something slower, more open, more emotionally available. And it's important to understand that this is not performance. It's a response. Younger women often grow up in a world that encourages them to be loud, sharp, competitive, always proving something, always asserting independence. They move through life with a kind of guarded confidence, not because they don't want to be feminine, but because they don't feel safe enough to let their softer energy surface. Modern interactions have conditioned many of them to stay alert, stay cautious, stay in control. That guardedness becomes a habit, and that habit becomes a protective shell. But an older man introduces a different emotional environment. His presence isn't chaotic. His energy isn't scattered. He doesn't need validation. He isn't competing for dominance. He's not trying to impress. And that emotional steadiness creates an unexpected shift inside her. She doesn't have to raise her voice. She doesn't have to prove her worth. She doesn't have to fight for attention. She feels something she rarely feels around men her age. She feels seen without having to perform. That's when her femininity emerges. Her voice becomes softer, not because she wants to please him, but because she no longer needs to protect herself from emotional instability. Her posture relaxes. Her laughter becomes more genuine. Her vulnerability becomes less intimidating. She starts leaning into her natural essence. And this transformation is not about him controlling her. It's about him creating a space where she finally feels safe enough to be herself. Psychologically, this is tied to something profound: polarity. Human attraction thrives on the dynamic tension between masculine and feminine energy. This isn't about gender roles, it's about emotional frequency. Masculine energy is defined by direction, consistency, confidence, stability. Feminine energy responds to that by expressing softness, warmth, intuition, fluidity. When a younger woman senses the grounded presence of an older man, her inner world instinctively mirrors that stability with openness. She feels like she can exhale. She feels like she can let go of the constant pressure to hold everything together. And what makes this shift even more powerful is that she doesn't notice it happening. It's subconscious. It's emotional biology. Her protective instincts quiet down because she senses leadership, not dominance, but emotional leadership. She senses maturity, not age, but wisdom. She senses clarity, not arrogance, but self-awareness. And when a man carries that level of emotional grounding, it unlocks the part of her that has been waiting for someone who doesn't drain her energy, but elevates it. People misunderstand femininity. They think it's weakness or delicacy. But in reality, femininity is a form of emotional intelligence. It is the ability to feel deeply, to connect effortlessly, to communicate through presence rather than force. Younger women often suppress this side of themselves because the modern dating world doesn't reward softness. It punishes it. But an older man's stability creates a space where femininity is not only safe, it is valued. This is why younger women speak differently around older men. Their voices take on a different rhythm. Their eyes soften. Their emotional walls lower. It's not childishness. It's not dependency. It's resonance. They're responding to a man who doesn't confuse them, who doesn't overwhelm them, who doesn't make them question their worth. And the psychological truth is simple: femininity is a response to emotional safety, not a reaction to physical attraction. When a younger woman feels this internal shift, she might not know how to explain it, but she feels it in every interaction. She becomes more expressive. She becomes more attentive. She becomes more intentional. It's as if her emotional world is saying, "Here, I can be soft. Here, I can be real." And that softness is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of trust. It means she sees in him something grounded enough to hold the emotional depth she carries. She isn't becoming someone new around him. She's becoming her true self. The self she hides from those who haven't earned access to her vulnerability. The self she protects from men who are unstable or unpredictable. Around an older man she respects. Her femininity isn't something she gives, it's something she reveals. And the truth is, men who understand this have an advantage that is not about age, but about emotional mastery. Women don't soften around men they don't trust. They soften around men who give them room to breathe, to feel, to unfold. So remember this: when her energy softens, it isn't submission, it's connection. It's her heart recognizing stability and responding with authenticity. And if you're wise enough to notice it, don't take that softness for granted. It's not just attraction. It's the beginning of something real. When a younger woman starts developing feelings for an older man, one of the most revealing yet most misunderstood behaviors emerges quietly. She begins to seek his opinion, but not in obvious, dramatic ways. She doesn't sit him down and ask deep emotional questions. She doesn't openly confess her curiosity about how he thinks. Instead, she slips these questions into simple, everyday conversations. And most men never realize the psychological significance behind this subtle shift. She starts asking things like, "What do you think about this?" Or, "Do you believe this is a good idea?" Or, "Have you ever experienced something similar?" On the surface, these questions look casual. They look like normal conversation, but underneath, they carry a very specific purpose. She is not gathering information. She is gathering alignment. She wants to understand not what he knows, but how he sees the world. You see, when a younger woman is interested in a man her age, she rarely seeks his opinion with depth. She asks for fun, for validation, or simply to keep the conversation going. But when she develops feelings for an older man, her intention changes. She wants to understand how he thinks because she's evaluating something fundamental: compatibility. Not compatibility in the superficial sense, but emotional and intellectual compatibility. She wants to know if her inner world can connect to his. And the reason this happens is rooted in psychology. Women are drawn to emotional intelligence, stability, and clarity. Younger men often lead with impulse, ego, or bravado. Their opinions tend to be reactive, inconsistent, or influenced by insecurity. But an older man speaks from experience, not immediacy. He answers with depth rather than defensiveness. His perspective is grounded, and that groundedness is what she's seeking. When she asks for his thoughts, she's actually testing three things: emotional wisdom, decision-making, and alignment of values. She wants to see how he approaches conflict. She wants to see whether he thinks before speaking. She wants to see if he has direction, purpose, and a steady internal compass. Because if she senses emotional instability, her feelings immediately retreat. But if she senses clarity, integrity, and maturity, her feelings deepen. This is why her questions sound innocent. She's protecting herself. She doesn't want to reveal too much of her emotional interest too soon. She doesn't want to expose vulnerability without confirming emotional safety. So she asks indirectly. She asks carefully. She asks lightly, yet intentionally. It's her way of saying, "Show me who you are," without openly admitting, "I care about who you are." What makes this behavior even more interesting is that she doesn't seek his opinion on trivial matters. Her questions quietly target areas that matter to her: relationships, future decisions, life philosophy, conflict, ambition, emotional boundaries. She's filtering information. She's watching how he handles topics that reveal character. She notices whether he is consistent with his values. She listens for emotional stability in his voice. She observes how he holds himself when discussing things that matter. In these small moments, she discovers whether his worldview aligns with the emotional environment she's drawn to. And something profound happens when she starts valuing his thoughts. She becomes more intentional with her own behavior. She speaks differently around him because she wants conversations with him to have meaning. She becomes more thoughtful, not to impress him, but because his presence activates a deeper part of her. She begins to imagine how a relationship with him would feel, how he might guide her, support her, challenge her, and influence her growth. This is not dependency. This is emotional selection. She's choosing a man who elevates her thinking rather than draining her energy. Older men often underestimate the importance of this moment. They interpret her questions as friendliness or curiosity, not realizing that she is placing emotional trust in him. When a younger woman seeks your opinion, she is revealing that she values your mind. And when a woman values a man's mind, that is one of the strongest indicators of genuine interest. Physical attraction might spark curiosity, but intellectual attraction sustains emotional connection. She is opening a door quietly, slowly, hoping you notice her effort without overwhelming her with assumptions. So when she asks what you think, don't dismiss it. Don't answer casually. Don't treat it like a meaningless exchange. She's allowing you into the inner structure of her thoughts. That is not something she shares with every man. It is something she offers only when she senses emotional potential. Remember this: when she seeks your opinion, she's not asking for answers. She's asking for reassurance that you are the kind of man who thinks with depth, speaks with intention, and leads with clarity. And if you want to keep her interest, respond not just with knowledge, but with wisdom. Her questions are the beginning of her trust. And trust is the beginning of everything. When a younger woman begins developing feelings for an older man, one of the first emotional shifts she experiences is a kind of nervousness she can't explain. Not to her friends, not to herself, and sometimes not even to him. This isn't the surface-level nervousness you feel before a date or when you meet someone attractive. It's deeper. It sits in her chest. It makes her second-guess her words. It makes her rehearse sentences in her mind before she speaks. And the most powerful part of this shift is that it doesn't come from insecurity. It comes from realization. She realizes she has something to lose. Younger women are used to holding emotional power in most interactions. Men their age chase, pursue, overinvest, and overreact. They're used to admiration coming easily. They're used to attention without effort. They're used to emotional safety that demands very little from them. But an older man changes that dynamic entirely. He doesn't chase in desperation. He doesn't cling. He doesn't overplay his interest. His emotional presence is steady, controlled, self-contained. And that kind of presence forces her to confront a different kind of nervousness. The kind that comes from wanting to be seen correctly. She becomes nervous because she knows older men are not distracted by superficiality. He sees behavior, not excuses. He sees intention, not performance. He picks up on small signals, subtle shifts, inconsistencies, and she realizes she is now dealing with someone who understands emotional patterns, someone who can read silence, someone who notices the moments she tries to hide. This awareness makes her more thoughtful with her words, more careful with her expression, more aware of how she shows up. Her nervousness is actually respect. It's the recognition that this connection is different, that it carries emotional weight, that he has depth she doesn't want to disrupt. She becomes afraid not of rejection, but of misalignment. She worries that one wrong tone, one careless joke, one moment of impulsiveness might distort the connection. Younger men rarely inspire this kind of emotional seriousness, but older men do, because she knows they don't tolerate emotional chaos. They don't entertain drama. They don't get pulled into games. And she becomes nervous because deep down, she doesn't want to lose someone who feels emotionally rare. Another reason for her nervousness is something evolutionary and psychological. Women attach more deeply to stability than intensity. Younger men offer passion, adrenaline, excitement, unpredictability. Older men offer clarity, grounding, emotional structure, and that stability awakens a deeper instinct in her, the instinct to protect what matters. Her body tells her, this is safe, this is steady, this is something that can grow. And the moment she feels that, fear enters. Not fear of him, but fear of losing what feels meaningful. This fear makes her more intentional. She chooses her outfits more carefully. She shows up with more emotional presence. She listens more deeply. She pays attention to small details he mentions because she wants to prove subconsciously that she cares. She doesn't want to disappoint him. She doesn't want him to think she's immature, unfocused, or unstable. Younger men rarely create this emotional response because the stakes are low. But with an older man, the stakes rise without either of them saying a word. Her nervousness also comes from the awareness that older men have options, not in the superficial sense, but in the emotional sense. They know themselves. They are selective. They don't choose based on impulse. They choose based on alignment, consistency, energy. And she knows she can't win him with beauty alone. She knows he values depth, calmness, integrity, emotional presence. And that realization pushes her into a quiet internal battle. She wants to show who she is, but she fears revealing too much too soon. This internal tension creates the nervous energy you see when she's around him. She blushes more easily. She hesitates before speaking. She looks away when she's trying to hide how much she feels. Her heart reacts before her logic does. And although she tries to stay composed, her body betrays her. That's not immaturity. That's emotional intensity meeting emotional value. What most men don't realize is that this nervousness is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of investment. She becomes nervous because she knows she is stepping into a connection that demands her best self, not her social persona. She becomes nervous because she finally feels something that isn't casual, predictable, or replaceable. So when you see her fumbling for words, avoiding eye contact, adjusting her clothes, overthinking her messages, understand this: she's not unsure about you. She's unsure about herself, because she's finally met someone who makes her want to rise to a higher emotional standard. And remember this, her nervousness isn't fear, it's recognition. It's her heart acknowledging that you're not just another man. You're a possibility. When a younger woman starts developing genuine feelings for an older man, one of the strongest yet most subtle indicators is her sudden desire to spend uninterrupted, one-on-one time with him. Not in a group, not in a loud environment, not in a setting where she has to compete for space or attention. She wants moments where it's just the two of them, where she can feel his presence without the noise of everything else around. And this shift is powerful because women don't seek intimacy through isolation unless something inside them has already shifted. Younger women are usually comfortable in groups. They feel safer around their friends. They like shared environments where they can hide their emotions behind laughter, conversation, or distraction. But when she begins wanting one-on-one time with an older man, it means she is no longer trying to hide anything. She wants to see him clearly, and she wants him to see her clearly too. That desire comes from emotional depth, not superficial attraction. What she's really looking for in those private moments is connection without interruption. She wants to hear his voice without other people talking over it. She wants to watch how he behaves when no one else is influencing the environment. She wants to feel what the energy between them is like when it's pure, unfiltered, and direct. Younger men rarely inspire this desire because they often bring chaos into the space. They talk too loudly, they dominate conversations, or they get distracted easily. But an older man's presence has weight, it has calmness. It has a kind of emotional gravity she wants to experience in isolation. She also seeks one-on-one time because she's evaluating him at a deeper level than she can in public. In groups, people perform. People exaggerate. People act differently. But in a quiet interaction, she gets to see who he really is, how he listens, how he reacts to silence, how he treats her when no one else is watching. Women feel truth in the small, intimate moments far more than in big, dramatic ones. She wants to understand whether he is the same person privately that he is publicly, because that consistency is what builds trust in her heart. There's another layer to this behavior: emotional safety. One-on-one time requires vulnerability. It requires presence. It requires authenticity. She knows that being alone with him will naturally reveal parts of her personality she doesn't show to just anyone, and she only allows that if she feels emotionally secure. Around an older man she respects, she feels like she can lower her guard without losing herself. She feels like her emotions won't be judged or misunderstood. And so she begins to seek more private settings, not because she's trying to seduce him, but because she's trying to grow closer to him without the world intruding. This desire can show up in subtle ways. She might suggest a walk. She might ask for advice and linger in the conversation longer than needed. She might cancel other plans just to spend time with him. She might choose settings where she knows she won't be interrupted. These are not random decisions, they're emotional choices. What's fascinating is how intentional she becomes with her time. Younger women don't invest their time in men who don't matter to them. They don't rearrange schedules. They don't create opportunities. They don't carve out emotional space unless they feel a connection that's rare. And with an older man, she feels something she rarely finds: stability mixed with excitement, maturity mixed with curiosity, safety mixed with possibility. That combination is intoxicating for her, and she seeks environments where she can experience it more deeply. She also wants to see how she feels in his presence without distraction. Sometimes women need to feel themselves, not just the man. They need to tune in to how their body reacts, how their mind calms down, how their emotions shift. She wants to know if she feels peaceful, energized, grounded, alive. Groups don't allow that. One-on-one moments do. And beneath all of this, there is a quiet longing she doesn't talk about. When she starts wanting private time with him, it means she is imagining a version of her life where he plays a central role, not a background one. She is imagining conversations at dinner, shared mornings, meaningful nights, emotional partnership. She is not fantasizing about the man, she is imagining the connection. And that difference is everything. If you pay attention, you'll notice that she looks at him more when they're alone. She listens more carefully. She opens up more easily. Her softness becomes more visible, her curiosity more sincere, her presence more intentional. It's in these private spaces where her real feelings reveal themselves, not through confession, but through behavior. So when a younger woman starts carving out moments where it's just the two of you, understand the significance. She isn't asking for attention. She's offering intimacy. She's offering access. She's offering trust. She's showing you that you matter enough for her to remove the world and choose presence instead. And remember this, when she seeks time alone with you, it's because she sees something worth exploring, and she hopes you're wise enough not to take that moment for granted.